Hey guys, how's it going? Wow, heck of a, well, I guess 36 hours, not quite 36 hours. Hey guys, how's it going? Wow, yeah, heck of a, it's well, I guess been very interesting. 36 hours, not quite 36 hours. Hey guys, how's it going?
Tweet live stream yesterday.
Wow. Yeah, heck of a, I guess been very interesting. 36 hours, not quite 36 hours. Hey guys, how's it going?
Live stream yesterday.
Well, let's start out with some good news. Very interesting. 36 hours. 36 hours. Good guys, how's it going?
Bitcoin's up
Last hour. Well, let's start out with some good news. So we're up over 53,000. So 36 hours. Good guys, how's it going?
We got that good news
last hour. Well, let's start out with some good news. So anyway, 53,000. So 36 hours. Good guys, how's it going?
We got that good news
last hour. Well, let's start out with some good news. So anyway, 53,000. So, but obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. Well, let's start out with some good news. So, anyway, 50,000. So, but obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. Well, let's start out with some good news. So, anyway, 50,000. So, where we go from here. But obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. Well, let's start out with some good news. So, anyway, 50,000. So, where we go from here. But obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. Already started out with some good news. So anyway, 50,000. So where we go from here. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. Already started out with some good news. So anyway, 50,000. So where we go from here. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. Already started out with some good news. So anyway, 50,000. So where we go from here. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So already started out with some good news. So anyway, 50,000. So I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can conversation. Obviously, guys, we got that good news last hour. So just already started out with some good news. So anyway, so I can. Tell me if it's better now. So can you only hear me? Can you only hear me now? Okay, got it. Alrighty. Sorry about that, guys. Still learning OBS. Occasionally I run into issues like this. So anyway, did you guys get what I was saying, or was it complete, like, just talking over, you couldn't understand anything? Okay, thanks, Savage. I'll start over at the beginning. All right, well, I won't go through the Bitcoin because you saw the chart, but let me go back to the MICA thing that was being talked about. I'll summarize it a bit this time. So basically, he's saying the congestion fees should have never have gone to the miners in the first place. And that isn't wrong. The problem is that once they have, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. The hash rate has risen because the profitability has gone up. And so now you have all this hash rate. What happens to all this hash rate when you do a 1559 change? So, he was saying it was just a coincidence in timing. It's not a coincidence in timing, because he says in the sentence before that it lit some proverbial fires under the Ethereum core devs to get 1559 done because the fees grew. Well, it's too late once the fees grow. And the faster you get it done, I mean, this would have been when the fees started to go up in August. That's the time that they should have been really pushing to get this done, realizing that, okay, we better do this now. Well, we're going to be talking about a year later when this started to actually putting this into a fork. Well, that's way too much time. Obviously, they weren't working on it when they should have been. They knew it was a possibility, and they didn't get it done. It doesn't matter. Like I said, genie's out of the bottle. So then this is kind of the real thing that, a couple of things that were mentioned here. I've not had found, I'd said, I can appreciate the frustration. He's like, I have not found it too hard to filter out the good arguments from the bad, though, so it isn't too big of a deal for me to personally when people express their frustration. And then I said, I hate to say it, but the miners have not organized yet. Again, this was back in January. I said, but a few have started to. And so he says, I encourage miners organizing to achieve their goals. If our system isn't successful in the face of an organized group, then it isn't a good system. In fact, that is why I want to move away from proof of work to proof of stake, because if miners ever do organize 51% of hashing power, we will have some problems. So he says right there, I encourage miners to organize. Well, that's what we're doing, but yet other people are like, anyway, we'll get into that in a little bit. And then lastly, and this is what really got me, that being said, I'm skeptical that miners will be able to coordinate 51% of hashing power in an attack against Ethereum for a number of reasons. One being that I think it goes against their self-interest. I think some miners believe they have more power than they actually do, short of a 51% attack against the network. Well, yeah, that's, consolidating of mining hash power is the only thing we can do. Otherwise, you could pay us nothing. That you'd lose all your security because you wouldn't have anybody doing blocks. But let's say you lowered the hash of the block reward down to 1. It'd be similar to what happened with Conflux. Conflux is a very, very small network with very, very little market cap. So there's not really a lot to be gained by doing a 51% attack against them. But with Ethereum, with how big the market cap is, you lower it to 1, you lower the cost of a 51% attack because there's less hash rate. There's less hash rate you have to buy. So, yeah. And the thing that he and all the other all-core devs always do is they lump in miners and mining pools into the same bucket. And as we all know, miners, are many, many, many more than the number of mining pools. So, like I said, I'm going to be a little bit all over the place tonight. So I definitely did want to bring that up. Again, they don't think that we can accomplish this. And what gets me is and this is what really got me with some of the responses today. You can't have it both ways. You can't express, oh my God, what are you guys going to do to the network? You can't express that and then say, on the other hand, there's no security risk. Those two things don't go together. You either have a security risk that you want to try to avoid, or you don't. So you can't make that argument of, you guys shouldn't do this because what are you guys going to do to the network? Well, we're not going to actually do anything to the network. And in fact, with 51% attacks, rarely are they accomplished in majority or in vast majority by miners. Miners may facilitate it by having their hash rate at a rental hash rate, or of some other way where somebody can gain access to that hash rate. But yeah, in this case, what we are doing is showing, because they said it couldn't happen, we are showing them that the risk that they said couldn't happen can. And maybe we won't be able to make it happen. If we can't manage to communicate with the entire world, not just the Western world, we may not be able to. But I'd certainly like to try. I'm all for it. So anyway, that's kind of the bad side of things. And I had a number of conversations with people on the ETH R&D server today regarding this, trying to say, look, if we were looking to do damage, we would be consolidating our hash rate at NiceHash, period. That's where the most damage can be done, because anybody can gain access to it, unless NiceHash does something. But for right now, consolidating an Ether mine, I know some people are like, well, somebody could get into Ether mines and hack it. Well, yeah, they could. But that's the reason why Ethermine knows that this is coming. And we checked it out with them to make sure that they could handle additional hash rate. And their response was, we could handle 100% of the Ethereum network hash rate. So most likely they are scalable. I had also asked Flexpool if we had tried to consolidate to them, would they be able to handle it? And their answer was, yeah, they basically use AWS. So it's a scalable architecture so that it can scale with the demand. I would expect that Ethermine's probably very similar to that. So anyway, so we've checked out all these things. So anyway, enough of 4.1. So the other thing that I was getting from people on the ETH R&D team is that, and this is the for and against EIP 1559, that kind of talk needs to stop. I believe that miners that know about 1559 and what it does are not against what 1559 is trying to accomplish. It makes fees more predictable. It makes it better for the users that are using apps and trading and all those kinds of things, that it's a better user experience for them. So we're all for that. So that has nothing to do with the intent of 1559. The problem is the implementation of 1559 is the burning of fees, and miners understand that the burning of fees, because of the implementation, makes it necessary to make it so that the miners can't manipulate the base fee. And the only way, and the way that they have decided to move forward with this, is by burning the fees. It's the least complicated. It's the easy solution. There are other solutions, including iSmoothing, that could basically do the same thing with approximately the same amount of risk of manipulation. So they have chosen that's too complicated. Even Vitalik had said at one point that it's probably not as complicated as people have originally made it out to be. But that ship has sailed. They're not going to do iSmoothing. There's not enough time to implement it before the London fork, in my opinion. Let's put it this way. If we did present it, that's what they would say, because they don't want to implement it. So unless there is a dev willing to step up to the plate that's on the miner side of things and actually implement it in each of the clients, then that's the only way that's going to happen, and that just isn't going to happen. Regarding the block reward increase, this is where things get a little bit more interesting. So Bitsby Trippin, as we all know, had in the very short period of time that he had on that community call, he had suggested raising the block reward by 1. Very simple solution. Should, in most cases, alleviate any security concerns. And again, he was talking from the standpoint of security, not on greed of miners, not on anything other than what is the cost of security. And that's where the conversation needs to go. The users, the devs, all believe they are paying too much for security. Now, people may not want to hear this, but they are. If they weren't paying too much for security right now, the hash rate wouldn't be escalating out of control. And that's what's happening. That tells them that they are paying too much is probably the one word. They're paying more than they have to in order to secure the network. Let's put it that way. So the question is a block reward of 2 enough? And that's where the conversation needs to go. And right now, they haven't even engaged in that conversation other than to, just as I mentioned the other day, swat us away like a mosquito and not even engage the question. They're not engaging the question. They're not providing any information as to why they believe. They're just like, well, again, it's one of those things. It's just an assumed close. Oh, you're an idiot. This is the way it is. It's block reward of 2 is going to be just fine. Just watch. We know better. And that's just not right. If it was right, and if it was what you really believe, you'd be able to explain it. And nobody has explained it at this point. Nobody has taken the time that Bitsby Trippin has taken to actually go through all the numbers and the different scenarios. The amount of time that he has put into this is amazing that he's done on his own. And would love to actually talk with him one-on-one. I haven't been able to get a hold of him. I'm sure he's got DMs coming out the yin-yang as far as people trying to talk to him. But anyway, so here's been my thought. So again, going on the block reward increase, the problem is, and even Bitsby Trippin said this, we don't know what the block reward increase needs to be in July. We have no idea. I mean, if Ethereum continues to, goes to 3, 4, 5,000, and gas prices, or the amount of gas being used, the block reward, the transaction fee rewards actually stays where it is, or maybe even comes down a little bit like it had last week. It's come back up again today. But if it stays where it was last week, well, yeah, then maybe not. But we don't know that that's going to be the situation in July. Nobody does. So the question is, what do you do? So I'm still trying to work my way through this. Unfortunately, Tim Biko has basically said, if I'm going to submit something, I really need to submit it by tomorrow. So I'm probably going to submit a placeholder and hope that it will generate conversation about how to determine the right amount. And maybe the amount come July is 0. Maybe it is just a block reward of 2. But at least there would be some thought put into the required amount of security and how much do they have to pay in order to secure the network in different scenarios. So my thought in this particular one is to take the transaction fees. I don't have anything in there about price at this point, but to take the average the average of the transaction fee for the prior 2 months to the fork, and take 50% of that and make that the block reward increase. So if L2 solutions get implemented and adopted, so that it brings gas prices down, that would be factored in, so that we're not just guessing in March as to where we're going to be in July. So that's my thought. Would love to get comments, conversation going even tonight, but definitely would love to get comments for people that are watching this after the fact. Would love to get miner support for this effort, because like I said, it may end up being 0. and that's okay. So the other part of this is, I mean, this is really no different than real life. So we can all think of situations where people got pay cuts or reductions and things like that, and they weren't happy about it. And you have a choice when you have a job. You either quit or you continue working at the lower pay. So you have a choice. Again, we have this choice as well. We can either quit mining Ethereum and go work for somewhere else on another coin, or we can continue with the lower pay. Same thing. The thing is that from a company perspective, just like with ETH, they have responsibilities to their shareholders. Now, are these shareholders, coin holders? I think the analogy still stands. They have an obligation to their shareholders. Yes, they have an obligation to their whales to make Ethereum as profitable and make it as profitable as possible. And that is twofold. One is to make their network as usable as possible, and another is to help drive the price up. So, but again, for miners, we're getting a cut in pay. We can argue what that cut in pay is going to be, but we're getting a cut in pay. Well, I'll take it to an example when I was working in logistics. I probably told this story at least 2 or 3 times on probably some of my streams, but I'll tell it again. I was working on one of my customers was a customer that actually delivered radiological injections. And so we had drivers that were trained, had special lead containers in their cars, and again, we're trained how to handle these and trained that they had to be here because that had a half-life, that had to get to where it needed to go in a certain amount of time. They needed to stay communicating. So it wasn't just a simple, you've got a bunch of packages to deliver, and as long as they're all delivered by 9 o'clock, no problem. So again, it was a much more specialized account than any of our other accounts. So the drivers got paid a bit more. Well, somebody from up high decided that those people were getting paid too much. So it was my job to communicate that to these people and let them know that their pay was going to be cut. And I basically had the same conversation with them. I said, look, I don't like communicating this any better than you, or any more than you like hearing it. It was decided on top in order to save the account. They asked for a reduction, and that meant we had to reduce pay to you guys. So yes, there was a revolt. A lot of people left. We had some serious service problems. People had to reschedule their injections. This was a big deal. This was people's lives we were dealing with here. But powers that be on both sides, the customer and our side, thought the drivers would be happy with getting less. And they weren't. So we eventually recovered. Eventually, we had to raise the fees a little bit in order to make sure that we had enough drivers and such. But yeah, it was not easy, and we almost lost the account. Well, this is pretty similar. Our reputation was damaged as a result with that particular customer. So I don't see that being much different here. Is it worth damaging the reputation of Ethereum to save a few bucks when proof of stake is probably a year to 18 months away? It seems like very short-sighted, very, very short-sighted, when the real value of Ethereum is in the use of it, not in whether or not the inflation rate is 4% or 2% or 0% or minus 1%. It's amazing the reporting that I've seen about this, how they're talking about it's going to be deflationary. It won't necessarily be deflationary. In the current environment that we have seen in the last couple weeks, it's not been deflationary. It's been, the average has been 4 or below block reward or total reward. So at the very least, it'd be 0, not deflationary. So again, the amount of miscommunication and people not understanding, actually on both sides, is kind of amazing and frustrating all at the same time. Anyway, let me get to the chat and let me see if there's any questions. Let me go back to the beginning here. Okay, fixed. All right. Let's see here. Sounded like hundreds of you talking. Sorry about that. Oh, not really too many questions. Let's see. So why not just fork now? Why wait? My name starts with triangles. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Why don't they fork now? They are going to fork to the Berlin fork, but they don't have all the development done on 1559 yet. So they can't fork now. They're still figuring things out. If you go to the 1559 dev group or the all-core dev team, you can see some of the tests that are being done. You can see that there's still some questions about how the base fee is going to be determined, if it's going to be determined on by the previous block or 2 blocks prior. So there's some small changes that they're still considering. So they don't have all this figured out yet. Let's see. Yeah, fork ETH 1.0 now. Yeah, I'm not really sure if you're. Not really sure what you're saying there. Yeah, BBT is definitely a legend. No question. So when I say both sides, I mean that people who are saying, I'm just against 1559 because of the fee burn, they don't really understand that that's fine. Burn the fee, but make up for it somewhere else that we can't manipulate. The reason why they're burning the fee, and this is where, like, if you go back to when they wrote the EIP, the motivation of it is to make fees more predictable. In order to make them more predictable, it has to be a calculation. Well, a calculation can be influenced. Okay, so the mining pools can influence that by stuffing their blocks with empty transactions, driving the base fee up. So if the base fee is getting paid out, the mining pools can make sure that the base fee goes up. So that's really an untenable solution. So with the auction system, the pools can't do anything about that because they have no control over that. That is up to the person doing the transaction of how much are they willing to pay, how much are they willing to say, I'm going to bid this amount to get into your block. Like I said, with this system, it's a calculation, so we know exactly how much that next block is going to be based on the previous, in this case, maybe 2 previous blocks. Again, they're still figuring that out. So because of that, the mining pools can influence that, and thus that's the reason for the burning of the fees. But again, the burning of the fees is a side effect. It's the only way that they knew of at the time in order to make sure that mining pools could not influence the fees. And when they wrote this, remember, the fees were basically 0 when they initially wrote this. So they just never went back to think, what happens if? So, and nobody wants to go back and redo it at this point. So the idea is, well, if you're going to burn the fees, and if fees are incredibly high, when you guys go to fork and the hash rate, network hash rate continues to climb, that spike in reduction of pay at that high of a hash rate is going to have this mass exodus of hash rate away from Ethereum. And where's that hash rate going to go? Is it going to turn off? It might. It might. I don't think that's what typically happens, but at least not initially. People will try to move to another coin first. How will they move to that other coin? Many people will move to NiceHash because they won't know what coin to do. They'll be like, I'll just put it on NiceHash. It'll be profit switching. It'll just tell me how it works, so, or what coin to go on to. So all of this is a risk, and the higher the gas fees are at the time of the fork, the worse the risk is. Let me see what else might have been asked. burst mining before BAT. The devs started making your miner mine to their wallet 50% of the time. I'm not sure what you mean, John. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know what you mean. Anyway, there's a couple other things. Oh, a couple other things I wanted to go over. So this is an article that was written by, actually, this came as a result of my initial conversation with Micah, because we were going over like what happens if. And then he's like, you know what? I get asked these questions all the time. I'm just going to write an article. And this is when he wrote the article. Like I said, January 31st was when we had our conversation, and he wrote this. He basically took it from a number of other conversations that he had as well. So it wasn't just our conversation. It was just that our conversation was what finally made him go about doing it. And he actually asked me to review it, and because he has a tendency to be a bit blunt. And I basically said, no, you don't want to say that. You don't want to say that. There's no reason to piss off miners any more than the devs already have. So don't say that. And I'll tell you the one thing that I actually, so this is the one, miners quit. That's one of the options. Let's say that 90% of the miners just quit mining the chain in question altogether. They either light their mining rigs on fire and go find a new hobby, profession, business, or more likely they find other useful but slightly less profitable work to do with their hardware. And this is where the arrogance comes in. I'm sorry, Micah, but slightly less profitable. You don't know that. You don't know that it will be slightly less profitable than Ethereum. This is they assume that they will be the most profitable coin. If you go back to as early as January of last year, I wasn't mining Ethereum. I was mining Firo. It was more profitable. I was mining with only NVIDIA at the time, but that was what the most profitable thing was for me. It was more profitable than Ethereum. So to say that no, not necessarily. That's an assumption that you cannot come to that conclusion. You just can't, because it isn't that long ago where they weren't the most profitable. Anyway, but I basically got him to, he was just going to say light their mining rigs on fire. And I was like, no, you can't say that, because that's not what they're going to do. But anyway, the thing I wanted to put here was, this is really where, when there's talk about a 51% attack, this is what the risk is that there is a double spend attack. So when at the top of this page where it says miners launch double spend attacks, we're not launching the double spend attacks. We may facilitate by where we put our hash rate unintentionally, but we do not launch the double spend attacks. The double spend attacks are going to be by some whale who buys enough hash rate to gain, and may have some himself, gain enough hash rate to do this attack. So anyway, so they talk about the double spend attack, and then they said, while this attack is incredibly damaging, it is also incredibly hard to coordinate because there is opportunity to defect anonymously, and it requires a lot of central planning. This attack is much more viable if there is a single entity in control of 51% hashing power, as they only need to coordinate with and trust themselves. This is the point, is that they understand that if 51% gets put any one place, that can be either hacked or some bad seed gains that access to that particular hashing power. That could be a bad thing. They could lead to a double spend attack, and it is incredibly damaging. So basically, once this happens once or twice, centralized exchanges will likely stop allowing people to deposit that coin, which cause centralized exchanges to effectively be partitioned away from the rest of the network. Some applications that rely on off-chain integrations would also break and need to be disabled, such as layer 1 payments for goods and services. I mean, this completely breaks Ethereum if this were to happen. And we're only trying to point out that it could. Like I said, we have been told time and time again, it won't, it can't. And that's not true. At least that's what we're saying. So anyway, so that was the other thing I wanted to show here. So yeah, this article, all you gotta do is look up what does a minor revolt look like, and you can find the article on Medium. It's also, if you look up Coin Monks, that's where Mike files his articles. All right, let me get back to the chat. Let's see here. Hey, Mr. Baldini, neighbor. Taines, if you didn't sell it all, you're fine. It's never bad to sell on the way up. Just make sure that you're paying attention to dips and buying back in when it dips. I play the ups and downs in the market, but I always make sure I have a set amount of holding that I don't touch. So yeah, just keep that in mind when you're trading. At least that's the way I do it. Not financial advice. Always got to put that disclaimer in there. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. John, the devs are not taking miners' earnings. They are just not listening to miners. That's, to me, that is what I find the most frustrating. They're not listening. They are like, no, we can't possibly have a security issue. And we're like screaming it, sirens blaring. Yeah, I don't know what else we can say to let them know that they're wrong. They're wrong. And, like I said, and maybe they're right. We don't believe that they are, and we don't believe that it's worth risking. Like I said, the fact that people have responded the way that they have, why would you guys risk the network? Yada, yada, yada. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I thought there wasn't any security risk. Why are you guys complaining? It doesn't make any sense. So anyway, what I really would love to see is that the conversation only devolves into one thing. How much is enough or how much is too much to pay for security in order to secure the Ethereum network? The more that miners rally around that question, the more we'll get listened to. So please keep that in mind if you're posting anything, things like that. That is the question. And that's the real question. Let's see. Yeah, I'm waiting for it to crash to buy back up. Well, unfortunately, yeah, right now it doesn't look that way. Let's see. Well, I'm getting close to the end here. I'll probably keep it going for a few more minutes just so we can raid. Savage, are you going live tonight? And if he doesn't respond, then he probably is. Here, let me take a look. Let me see. Subscriptions. Yes, he is going live tonight. So we will raid him. He's going live at 8:30. Going over Ethereum Classic mining profits. Already? I don't know, maybe he's doing this weekly now instead of monthly. It seems like he just went over that. Not that I mean, it's always fun to look at profits. Never a bad thing. Anyway. Anybody else? Oh yeah, there we go. So I'll post his link. Yeah, I don't know how to do mods at this point. So otherwise I would just let him do it, but so question on security. Who actually pays for security? The devs act like they pay for it. No, they don't. And maybe in a way they do, but users are the ones really paying, right? Yes, the users are the ones paying for security. So again, it's a little more complicated than that. Under the current system, yes, users are the ones paying for security. But again, if we were in a system where the block reward was always the only thing we were getting paid, we would be fine right now. We would be fine. But that's not what happened. And the market reacts to, I mean, I'm trying to think of a good example of something that becomes very, very profitable, so it attracts competitors. That's what this was. We now, as we've seen this community grow, we've attracted more and more competitors. Stop it, Red Panda Mining. Stop getting more subscribers. You're making more competitors for the rest of us. Anyway, but that's the bottom line, is there's more competitors. Well, if all of a sudden somebody comes in and says, I'm not going to pay that much for what you guys are producing, I'm only going to pay half as much, and they are the big company that all of us were supplying at this higher price, well, guess what? Some of us aren't going to survive that, because our businesses were built on a larger profit margin. So yeah, I mean, really what it'll come down to is there's going to be some rough times ahead, regardless of what happens with 1559. Because as I said before, the biggest risk of everything going on is less of 1559 and more about the increase of the network hash rate. The more people that are attracted, the more hash rate there is, the bigger the crash once the market kind of comes to equilibrium. And again, the reason why we haven't come to equilibrium or even close to equilibrium at this point is because of the lack of silicon. ASICs cannot produce what they want to produce right now. So there's a severe lack of ASICs going into the market. New ones. Obviously, there's been ones that have come online that they have mined with, and that those are going to get sold. But anything new that they would be bringing on sale to burn in, yeah, right, that they can make money on until they decide they want to sell it. Yeah. So anyway, it's like I said, we're going to be in for some interesting times. I don't know how long this will continue to be as profitable as it is, but we're in for some rough times. This is normal mining, nothing new. There's going to be really good times. There's going to be some not so good times. And the real question is how high is Ethereum going to go? And we'll have to wait and see, how that affects things as well. One more question, then we'll go over to Savage's stream. That's his link right there. Yeah, I mean, 2K will definitely be a nice place to take some profits, I would think. Yeah, and Taines, you've been wanting to mine, and I've been having conversations with some of my friends that have wanted to mine as well. If you have a few GPUs, if you mine with what you got, I guess is the biggest thing. If you have some GPUs that are profitable, then mine with those. You don't have any capital investment that you didn't already have, but going out and buying new cards right now is very risky. Because, again, we've seen the profitability already come down. So it's not going to be as quick of a turnaround, and we can see that profitability come July is going to be, there's going to be a change come July, regardless of what the outcome is. Sorry, one last thing. I have written up that EIP. I haven't submitted it yet. So again, please comment below after the video. Definitely want to find out everybody's thoughts on it. Again, the EIP is to do a block reward increase of the average of the previous 2 months transaction fees divided by 2, similar to Bitsby Trippin proposal, but instead of a static +1, I'm trying to put it closer to the environment we're in when we get close to the fork, as opposed to guessing now, and taking that away from the core devs, and take that away from their argument. So, alrighty, guys, let's go over and raid. Savage Mine, and thanks everybody for coming. I appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Have a good night.